My name is Mara Ellison, and for 33 years I believed the quietest lie a family can teach you, that love and usefulness are the same thing. 3 months ago, at my parents' 38th anniversary dinner, my father stood at the head of a long table covered in ivory linen, lifted a glass of champagne, and announced that he and my mother were taking the whole family to Greece for a 2-week celebration. My sister covered her mouth and cried. Her husband clapped my father on the back. The guests around us smiled like they had just witnessed a scene from a perfect family movie. And for one foolish second, I smiled too. I pictured blue water, white houses on cliffs, sunlight on my skin, 2 weeks where nobody would ask me to cook, clean, drive, schedule, organize, soothe, remember, or fix anything. Then I asked the question that ruined the illusion. When do we fly? My father looked at me as if I had misunderstood a private joke. My mother's expression tightened so quickly that I almost apologized before anyone even answered. Then my father said, in front of 36 guests, "Mara, you won't need a flight. Someone responsible has to stay behind with the children." The room went still. My sister looked down at her lap. My mother reached for her wineglass, and I stood there holding a tray of dessert plates, realizing that when they said the whole family, they had never meant me. What they didn't know was that I had a secret. Not an affair, not a hidden bank account, not some dramatic revenge plan I had been sharpening in the dark. My secret was quieter than that, but in the end, it changed everything. I had spent 3 years building a life no one in my family had bothered to notice. And on the night they humiliated me in public, I finally decided to step into it. The Ellison family lived in a stone-front house outside Philadelphia, on a street where every lawn looked professionally measured, and every mailbox matched the house numbers. My father, Grant Ellison, had spent his career running a chain of upscale furniture stores before retiring into golf, investment podcasts, and long speeches about discipline. My mother, Celeste, had never held a job outside the home, but she treated our family reputation like a full-time executive position. She chaired committees at church, planned charity luncheons, hosted bridal showers for women she barely liked, and corrected napkin folds as if national security depended on them. Then there was my younger sister, Brooke. Brooke was the kind of woman strangers called radiant. She had pale blonde hair, a house in a gated neighborhood, a diamond ring large enough to catch light from across a room, and a husband named Mason who worked in private equity and said things like liquidity event at family dinners. They had 2 children, 7-year-old Jonah and 4-year-old Isla, and they were expecting everyone to behave as if parenthood had made them martyrs. I was the eldest daughter, which, in our family, meant I was a daughter only in photographs. In real life, I was the emergency contact, the unpaid assistant, the person who remembered birthdays, drove my mother to appointments, babysat when Brooke was overwhelmed, handled my father's online passwords, picked up prescriptions, wrapped presents, cleaned kitchens, organized family events, and smiled when people said, "Mara is such a help." I worked as a freelance bookkeeper. My clients were small businesses, mostly women who ran bakeries, yoga studios, salons, and home offices. The work was steady but not glamorous, which meant my family treated it like a hobby I happened to be paid for. My father would ask, "Still doing your little numbers thing?" My mother would say, "At least it gives you flexibility." Brooke loved that word most of all, flexibility. She used it the way other people used a key. "Mara, you're flexible. Could you pick Jonah up? Mara, since your schedule is flexible, can you stay with Isla on Friday? Mara, I know it's last minute, but you don't have the same obligations we do." I never said no, not because I was noble, but because I had been trained not to recognize my own resentment until it turned into exhaustion. Every Thanksgiving, I arrived before sunrise to help my mother. Brooke arrived at noon with a bottle of wine she had not paid for and a story about how stressful traffic had been. Every Christmas Eve, I wrapped gifts until my back hurt, while my mother told guests Brooke had such a beautiful eye for presentation. Every birthday party for Jonah and Isla became my responsibility. I booked the entertainers, assembled favor bags, ordered cakes, cleaned frosting off floors, and made sure the children smiled in photos that Brooke later posted with captions about motherhood being magical and exhausting. I was never tagged. The strange part is that I did love the children. Jonah had a nervous habit of asking questions nobody else had patience for, and Isla once told me I smelled like rain and pancakes. I loved them enough that for years I let that love be used against me. Whenever I hesitated, Brooke would soften her voice and say, "They need their Aunt Mara." My mother would say, "Family steps up." My father would say, "Don't make this difficult." So I stepped up, until there was almost nothing of me left standing. The first crack in that life came after a man named Daniel left me. We had been together for 5 years. I thought we were moving toward marriage. I thought he was the one person who saw me outside my usefulness. Then one rainy Thursday evening, he sat on my second-hand sofa, rubbed his hands over his face, and said, "Mara, you're kind, but I feel like you're waiting for your life to begin, and I can't keep waiting with you." It was a cruel sentence because it was partly true. After he left, I spent weeks moving through my days as if someone had lowered the volume on the world. One afternoon, while walking home from a client meeting, I saw an old film camera in the window of a thrift shop. It was a Nikon, scratched at the edges, priced at $95. I bought it even though I did not have money to waste. That camera became the first thing in years that belonged only to me. At first, I took photographs because I did not know how else to speak. I photographed women at bus stops balancing grocery bags against their knees. I photographed motel cleaners smoking behind buildings at dawn. I photographed a nurse asleep on a train with her head against the glass. I photographed a widow in a laundromat folding men's shirts with such tenderness that I cried behind the lens. I did not pose them. I did not beautify them. I looked for the exact moment when people stopped performing and became real. Eventually, I created an anonymous page online called Still Seen. I never posted my face. I never used my last name. I wrote small captions beneath the images, not sentimental ones, just truthful ones. She has worked the night shift for 19 years. She said nobody had taken her picture since her husband died. She laughed after telling me she had forgotten what rest felt like. Slowly, strangers began following, then photographers, then artists, then women who wrote messages I could barely read without crying. "You noticed my mother. You noticed me. This is what invisible feels like." The only person in my family who knew was my Aunt Tessa, my mother's older sister. My mother described Tessa as brilliant but impractical, which was Celeste Ellison's way of saying a woman had chosen joy over approval. Tessa lived in Taos, New Mexico, where she ran a small coffee house and print studio called Blue Door. She wore turquoise rings, cut her own hair, never apologized for laughing loudly, and had long ago stopped attending Ellison family events because, as she once told me, "I prefer rooms where I can breathe." I had called her every Sunday night for years, always while sitting in my parked car because my mother hated when I brought Tessa up. One night, I sent Tessa a photograph of a woman selling flowers outside a hospital. She called me 5 minutes later and said, Mara, this isn't a hobby. This is a voice. I remember gripping the phone with both hands because nobody had ever said I had a voice before. 2 weeks before my parents' anniversary dinner, Tessa called and asked if she could send my photography page to someone she knew. His name was Elias Rowe, and he owned a respected gallery in Santa Fe. I almost said no. I had spent so long hiding my work that exposure felt like danger, but Tessa did not pressure me. She only said, "You can stay unseen if you want to. Just make sure hiding is a choice and not a wound." 3 days later, Elias emailed me. He said the Still Scene series had unusual emotional authority. He asked if I would consider a meeting about a possible exhibition. I stared at that phrase for an hour. Emotional authority. My family had spent years making me feel like a minor character in my own life, and a stranger in New Mexico had just described my photographs as if they mattered. I did not tell anyone. I answered the email, scheduled a video call, and tucked the hope away like a match in a dark pocket. Then came the anniversary dinner. My mother had insisted on hosting it at the Merion Oaks Club, a private venue with chandeliers, heavy drapes, and staff trained to pretend wealthy people were effortless. Of course, hosting did not mean my mother would handle the actual work. For 10 days, she called me before breakfast and after dinner with lists, seating chart, menu cards, guest confirmations, floral colors, memory table. Slideshow. My father wanted a toast drafted but did not want it to sound drafted. Brooke wanted to know if I could arrange childcare during the dinner because Jonah was in a sensitive phase, and Isla needed consistency. I spent hours scanning old family photos, cropping images where my mother looked younger, making sure Brooke had flattering angles, and quietly noticing how many pictures I was in only at the edge, half turned away, carrying something. On the day of the dinner, I arrived at the club at 10 in the morning. I supervised the flowers, fixed the slideshow, arranged framed wedding photos, reviewed the menu with the banquet manager, steamed my mother's backup shawl, and found emergency tights for Brooke because she had torn hers getting out of the car. By 7, when the guests arrived, I had changed in the restroom into a dark green dress I had owned for 6 years. My mother looked me up and down and said, "That color is a little dramatic, but it will do. Just don't hover near the front during the toast." Brooke arrived late, glowing in champagne silk, kissing cheeks, accepting compliments, handing Isla's sweater to me without looking. Mason ordered a drink and asked if I could keep an eye on Jonah because he and Brooke needed to network. At my parents' anniversary dinner. For the first 2 hours, I moved through the evening like hired help in family clothing. I found lost place cards. I carried crayons to the children's table. I reminded the pianist when to play my parents' wedding song. I fixed my mother's earring clasp in the hallway. A woman from my mother's church asked which catering company I worked for. Before I could answer, my mother laughed and said, "Oh, that's Mara, our practical one." Our practical one, not our daughter, not our eldest. Practical, like a storage closet. At 9:15, my father stood to make his toast. He had always known how to sound warm in public. He talked about love, loyalty, legacy, and building a family with strong values. My mother wiped a tear with a folded napkin. Brooke leaned against Mason's shoulder. I stood near the side wall beside the children's table, Isla asleep against my hip. Then my father smiled and said, "Celeste and I wanted this evening to be special, but we also wanted to continue the celebration in a way our family will remember forever. So next month, we are taking the whole family to Greece. Athens, Santorini, Crete, 2 full weeks together." The room erupted. People gasped, clapped, raised glasses. Brooke actually cried. Mason looked impressed, which was not easy to make Mason look. My mother placed a hand over her heart as if the surprise had not been her idea for months. I felt the old, childish part of me rise before I could stop it. The part that still wanted to be chosen. Greece. I had never crossed the Atlantic. I imagined standing in sunlight with nothing in my hands. I imagined being someone who arrived at a table instead of setting it. I stepped forward, still holding Isla, and said, "That sounds wonderful. When do we fly?" My father's smile faltered. Not much, just enough. My mother's eyes flashed toward Brooke. Brooke looked down at her champagne. Mason studied the menu. For 1 second, the whole room seemed to tilt. "Mara," my father said, lowering his voice but not enough. "You're not flying with us." I thought I had misheard. "What?" "You'll be staying here," my mother said, her voice smooth and sharp. "Brooke and Mason need this time. The children are too young for such a long trip, and you're the only person we trust to keep things stable." I looked at Isla asleep in my arms. I looked at Jonah under the table, playing with a toy car I had packed because Brooke had forgotten. Then I looked at the guests. 36 faces. Some embarrassed, some curious, some pretending to adjust napkins so they would not have to meet my eyes. My father added, "It's a generous arrangement, actually. We'll cover groceries while you stay at Brooke's house." Groceries, not payment, not gratitude, groceries. My mother smiled as if explaining something to a slow child. "You have flexibility, sweetheart, and no one else could do it the way you do." There it was, the compliment shaped like a chain. I wanted to say no. I wanted to ask why my life was always the one available for sacrifice. I wanted to hand Isla to her mother and walk out. Instead, years of training rose in my throat. "I see," I said. Brooke exhaled, relieved. My mother smiled again. My father returned to the room as if nothing had happened. The applause resumed awkwardly, then grew louder because people will do almost anything to cover discomfort. I stood there with my niece in my arms and felt something inside me go very quiet, not numb, clear. After the toast, Brooke found me in the hallway near the coach room. "Mara, don't make that face." "What face?" "The martyr face." She adjusted her bracelet. "You know we appreciate you." "Do you?" She sighed. "This is exactly why Mom didn't want to discuss it beforehand. You get emotional." "You didn't ask me." "We knew you'd say yes." That sentence landed harder than my father's announcement. Not because it was cruel, but because it was true. They knew. Everyone knew. I was a door that opened when pushed. Mason appeared behind her, already checking his phone. "Brooke, your parents are doing photos." Then to me, "We'll send the kids' schedule. Isla has a preschool event that week, but you can handle it. Also, Jonah's therapist prefers consistency, so don't change bedtime." "His therapist." Brooke waved a hand. "It's nothing serious, anxiety stuff. I'll put it in the notes." Notes. They had notes for my unpaid labor, instructions for my obedience. The dinner ended after 11. Guests kissed my parents goodbye and told them they were blessed. Brooke and Mason left early because the children were tired. My parents accepted compliments until the last coat had been collected. I stayed behind with the staff, boxing leftover cake, gathering framed photos, checking the room so my mother would not be charged for missing linens. By midnight, the club was nearly empty. My mother had gone to the ladies' room. My father was outside waiting for the valet. Her phone, forgotten on the table, lit up with a message from Brooke. I know I should not have looked, but my name was right there. The message preview said, "Did Mara seem mad?" My hand moved before my conscience could stop it. My mother's phone had no passcode because she hated technology drama. The text thread opened. Brooke, did Mara seem mad? My mother, she'll get over it. She always does. Brooke, Mason says we should probably give her something so she doesn't complain. My mother, absolutely not. If we pay her once, she'll start thinking her time has value. Brooke, true. And honestly, she should be grateful. The kids give her life some structure. My mother, she has always needed to be useful. It's better for her than being alone in that little apartment. I read the messages until the words blurred. If we pay her once, she'll start thinking her time has value. There are sentences that do not break your heart because your heart already knew. They break the story you told yourself to survive. I took photographs of the screen with my own phone. My hands did not shake. That surprised me. Then I put my mother's phone back exactly where I found it and carried the last box of decorations to my car. My mother came out complaining that the florist had used too much greenery. My father asked if I had remembered the guest book. I said yes. My mother said, "Good girl." I almost laughed. I drove home through silent streets, still wearing the dark green dress, still smelling faintly of lilies and champagne. My apartment was small, on the third floor of an old building where the radiator hissed in winter and the kitchen cabinets never closed properly. My mother called it temporary, though I had lived there for 8 years. But that night, when I stepped inside, it felt less like failure and more like a room waiting for me to decide who lived there. I sat on the floor beside my bed and opened Elia's Rose email again. We had already spoken once by video. He had asked to see the full series in person. He had said there might be space for me in the gallery's winter program if the work held together as a complete exhibition. I had told him I needed time. Time for what I did not know. Permission, maybe. A sign. A door. At 1:27 in the morning, I called Aunt Tessa. She answered on the third ring. "Mara." "I think I'm done," I said. She did not ask what I meant. "Tell me." So I told her everything. The dinner, Greece, the children, the guests, the texts. I read the sentence about my time having value and heard Tessa inhale sharply. When I finished, she was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "There's an apartment above the coffee house. It's dusty, but it's yours if you want it. I need help in the mornings. Elia's gallery is 45 minutes away. And, sweetheart, before you start listing reasons you can't, let me say this clearly. You can." I don't know how to leave. "You put things in boxes," she said. "Then you stop explaining your freedom to people who profited from your captivity." I cried then, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to admit to myself that I had been waiting years for someone to say the door was real. By sunrise, I had opened my closet and pulled down 2 suitcases. I packed clothes, tax files, camera gear, hard drives, my laptop, the old Nikon, and a shoebox of prints I had never shown anyone. I left behind things that suddenly felt like props from a life where I had been pretending. Chipped mugs from family Christmas exchanges, the extra booster seat Brooke had asked me to keep just in case. A stack of serving platters my mother stored at my apartment because she had run out of space. I placed them by the door and labeled them with names. Brooke, Mom, not mine. 2 days later, I went to my parents' house. My mother was in the breakfast room with travel folders spread across the table. Brooke sat beside her scrolling through resort photos, while Mason took a call in the hallway. My father was reading financial news on his tablet. My mother looked up. "There you are. I need you to come by Friday so we can go through the children's schedule." "I'm not watching the children," I said. For a moment, nobody moved. Brooke laughed once, like she thought I had made a strange joke. "What?" "I'm not available. I'm leaving Pennsylvania." My father lowered his tablet. "Leaving for what?" "A professional opportunity in New Mexico." My mother's face changed first. Not sadness, not concern, offense. "This is not the time for one of your little personal experiments." "It isn't an experiment." Brooke stood. "Mara, we leave in 4 days." "You leave in 4 days. I was never invited." "That is not fair," my mother snapped. "You know very well why we need you here." "Yes," I said, "because none of you believe my time has value." The room went cold. My mother's lips parted. Brooke's eyes flickered. She knew. My father looked between them, confused. I did not pull out my phone, not yet. I wanted to give them one chance to be honest. One chance. Brooke folded her arms. "I don't know what you're talking about, but this is incredibly selfish. Mason and I need a break. The kids need someone they trust." "You can hire someone." "Do you know what 2 weeks of full-time childcare costs?" she demanded. "Yes," I said. "That's the point." My father stood slowly, using the edge of the table to push himself up. "Mara, family is not a transaction." "No, but exploitation is." My mother gasped as if I had slapped her. "After everything we've done for you." I looked around the breakfast room, the polished table, the framed vacation photos I had never been part of, the silver tea service I had cleaned more often than I had used. "What have you done for me, Mom?" She blinked. "Excuse me." "What have you done for me? That wasn't really about keeping me available to you." My father's voice hardened. "Careful." I turned to him. "I have been careful my entire life. Careful not to need too much. Careful not to embarrass anyone. Careful not to make Brooke feel guilty. Careful not to ask why the family helper never gets helped. I'm finished." Brooke's face crumpled, but her voice turned sharp. "You'll regret this. You don't have anyone else." That used to be the sentence that frightened me most. That I would end up alone. That without my family's crumbs, I would starve emotionally. But standing there, I realized loneliness had never been the absence of people. Loneliness was being surrounded by people who only noticed you when they needed something. "I have myself," I said, "and I'm starting to think that's more than I had here." My mother put a hand to her chest. "If you walk out now, do not expect this family to rearrange itself around your feelings." "It already rearranged itself around everyone else's," I said. "I'm simply removing myself from the furniture." I left before anyone could answer. The next 48 hours were a storm of calls and texts. My mother began with command, then guilt, then outrage. "You are punishing innocent children." "Your father is beside himself." Brooke cried all night. "I hope your photography friends are worth losing your family." Brooke sent photographs of Jonah and Isla with captions like, "They keep asking why Aunt Mara doesn't love them anymore." Mason texted once, "This is childish. We can discuss reasonable compensation if that's what this is about. Reasonable compensation. After 33 years, they had discovered the language of payment only when free labor walked toward the door. I did not respond. I mailed my apartment notice, donated half my furniture, stored my bookkeeping files digitally, and put everything I cared about into my car. On my last morning in Pennsylvania, I walked through the apartment slowly. The rooms were nearly empty, but for the first time they did not feel sad. They felt completed. I placed Brooke's booster seat outside my door with a note that said, "Please arrange pickup." Then I carried my camera bag downstairs. The drive to New Mexico took 4 days. I could have flown, but I needed the distance to become physical. I needed to feel every mile between the woman who stayed and the woman who left. I stopped in Ohio, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Texas. I ate pancakes in diners where nobody knew my history. I photographed truck stop waitresses, motel curtains glowing in sunrise, a grandmother braiding a child's hair outside a gas station, a woman in a red coat smoking under a neon sign while snow fell behind her. Somewhere outside Amarillo, I pulled over and watched the sky become enormous. Pennsylvania had always made the sky feel divided by trees, wires, roofs, expectations. Here, it stretched without apology. I stood beside my car with the wind in my hair and took the first self-portrait I had taken in years. My face looked tired. My eyes looked alive. On the 4th evening, I reached Taos. Blue Door sat on a narrow street near an old adobe church, its sign painted in deep cobalt with a tiny gold cup in the corner. Tessa stood outside wearing a denim jacket and turquoise earrings, both arms open. I thought I would be dignified. I was not. I cried into her shoulder like a child. She held me tight and said, "Welcome to your own life." The apartment above the coffee house had slanted wooden floors, white walls, a narrow bed, a small kitchen, and windows facing the mountains. It smelled faintly of coffee, clay, and sun-warmed dust. Tessa had placed fresh sheets on the bed, a vase of wildflowers on the table, and a set of keys beside a note. No rent until you sell something. No arguments. The next morning, I woke before dawn to the sound of the espresso machine downstairs. Tessa taught me the morning rhythm. Unlock the front door at 6. Turn on the lamps. Put cinnamon rolls in the warmer. Greet Mr. Alvarez by name because he pretended not to care but did. Save oat milk for the yoga instructors. Smile at tourists but do not let them rearrange the chairs for better photos. By noon, I had foam on my sleeve, $23 in tips, and a strange sense of dignity I had never felt while serving my own family. Work given freely and work taken from you do not feel the same in the body. 2 days later, I drove to Santa Fe to meet Elias Rowe. His gallery, north window, stood on a quiet street with pale walls, raw wood floors, and sunlight pouring across everything like water. Elias was in his late 50s, with silver hair, round glasses, and the calm focus of someone who had spent his life looking carefully. He shook my hand with both of his. "Mara Ellison," he said, "I'm glad you came." I almost said, "Me too," but my throat tightened. He led me to a back room where my prints were spread across a long table. Seeing them there, outside my apartment, outside my secrecy, made my knees feel weak. The motel cleaner, the nurse on the train, the woman with the hospital flowers, the widow in the laundromat, lives I had witnessed, now laid out under gallery light. Elias did not rush. He studied each image in silence. Finally, he touched one print lightly at the corner. It showed a woman in a supermarket parking lot, sitting in her car with both hands on the steering wheel, crying before going inside. I had taken it from a distance, through rain, with her permission afterward. She had told me her mother had died that morning, but she still had to buy milk for her children. "This one," Elias said. "This is why I wanted to meet you." I looked down at the photograph. "Because she's crying." "No," he said. "Because you didn't steal her grief, you protected it." No one in my family had ever understood that tenderness could be a skill. Elias offered me an exhibition that afternoon. 12 pieces, opening in 8 weeks. The gallery would pay for printing, framing, installation, and publicity. I would receive 60% of sales. He wanted to title the show Still Seen, Women at the Edge of Everyone's Attention. When he said the title aloud, I had to turn toward the window because I did not want him to see me cry. I signed the agreement with my real name, Mara Ellison, artist. For the next 8 weeks, my life narrowed and expanded at the same time. Mornings at Blue Door. Afternoons in the studio behind Tessa's coffee house, editing photographs, preparing files, choosing paper, arguing gently with Elias about image order. He pushed me to include one self-portrait. I refused. He waited. A week later, I included the photograph from Amarillo, the one where the wind had made my hair wild and my eyes looked like they belonged to someone returning from far away. Elias placed it last in the sequence. "This is the exit wound," he said. I understood exactly what he meant. My family did not disappear quietly. Their trip to Greece became a disaster before it began. Without me, Brooke and Mason scrambled for childcare, discovered professional caregivers expected payment, and finally decided to take the children after all. My mother left voicemails from airports, hotel lobbies, ferry terminals. Jonah is overstimulated. Isla refuses to sleep. Brooke is exhausted. This would have been much easier if you had honored your commitment. My commitment. The one they invented without asking me. I deleted most messages unheard. A few I saved, not because I wanted to suffer, but because someday I knew I might forget how bad it had been. Memory softens abuse if you let nostalgia edit the facts. Brooke eventually found Still Seen. I know because one morning my anonymous account received a message from her personal profile. It said, "Is this you?" Nothing else. No apology, no congratulations, just accusation disguised as discovery. I did not answer. 3 days later, my mother called Tessa. I was in the coffee house kitchen when Tessa answered on speaker, wiping flour from her hands. "Tessa," my mother said, voice bright with false civility. "I assume Mara is with you." "She is." "You had no right encouraging this." Tessa looked at me. Encouraging what? A grown woman having a life. "She abandoned her family." "No," Tessa said. "She stopped auditioning for a role nobody paid her to play." My mother's voice sharpened. "You always resented us." "No, Celeste. I outgrew needing you to approve of me. There's a difference." I had never loved Tessa more. Opening night arrived in early December. Santa Fe had turned cold, and the sky outside the gallery was the color of steel. Inside, north window glowed. 12 of my photographs hung on the walls, each framed simply, each with a small card beside it. My name appeared near the entrance in black letters. Maraellison. Still Seen. I stood there staring at it until Tessa nudged me. "You can breathe, you know." "I'm trying." "You are not on trial." But I felt like I was. not because of the art world, because being seen after years of being useful felt almost indecent. Guests arrived slowly at first, then all at once. Artists, collectors, students, women from the coffee house, a journalist from a regional arts magazine, two of Elia's serious collectors who spoke quietly and bought loudly. People stood in front of my photographs and did not ask what I could do for them. They asked what I had seen. They asked how I had made the work. They asked what came next. A woman in a black coat cried in front of the laundromat photograph. A man with a white beard bought the supermarket parking lot piece for $4,000. When Elias placed a red dot beside the title card, I stared at it as if it were a miracle. By 8 o'clock, 4 pieces had sold. Then the gallery door opened, and my past walked in wearing expensive coats. Brooke entered first. Her hair was perfectly blown out, her eyes scanning the room with panic and calculation. Mason followed, jaw tight, phone in hand. Behind them came my parents. My mother wore a camel coat and pearls, dressed not for an art opening but for control. My father looked older than I remembered. Or maybe I was finally looking at him without needing him to become someone else. For a moment, none of us moved. Then my mother crossed the gallery. Mara. Not hello, not congratulations, just my name used like a leash. Elias appeared beside me. Friends of yours. My family, I said. His expression did not change, but his shoulders squared. Brooke reached me first and threw her arms around me. I went stiff. She pulled back quickly, hurt flashing across her face as if my body's refusal were an insult. We've been worried sick. No, you haven't, I said quietly. You've been inconvenienced. Mason glanced around. This is bigger than we expected. It's a gallery opening, I said. That was in the article. My mother's eyes moved over the walls, the guests, the red dots, my name. I watched her understand, piece by piece, that this was not a phase staged in someone's basement. This was a room full of strangers treating me with respect. Brooke lowered her voice. Can we talk somewhere private? No. Her face tightened. Mara, please. I looked toward the photograph of the supermarket woman, already sold. I thought about all the women I had photographed at the edge of their breaking points. How many had swallowed words to keep rooms comfortable? How many had protected people who never protected them? No, I said again. Anything you came to say, you can say here. My mother smiled at Elias, at the nearby guests, at anyone watching. This is a family matter. Tessa stepped beside me. Then perhaps the family should have handled it before showing up at her workplace. Mason's jaw flexed. With respect, Tessa, this isn't your business. Tessa laughed softly. People always say that when they want silence from the witness. Brooke's eyes filled. I'm pregnant again. The words landed heavily. For years, news like that would have pulled me instantly back into service. I would have imagined meals, school pickups, laundry, emergency nights, my life bending around hers before she even asked. This time, I only said, I hope you and the baby are healthy. She blinked. That's it. What did you expect me to say? I need you, she whispered, and there it was. The family prayer, the old spell, I need you, not I miss you, not I hurt you, not I'm sorry, need. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. Brooke was not evil. That would have been easier. She was spoiled by a system that had taught her my sacrifice was natural. She had grown up drinking from a cup I was expected to keep filling, and now she was shocked that I had stepped away from the sink. "I'm not coming back to raise your children," I said. A few nearby guests stopped pretending not to listen. Brooke flushed. "That is not what I'm asking." "It is exactly what you're asking." "I'm asking for help." "You're asking for the old arrangement with softer language." Mason stepped forward. "Mara, nobody is trying to exploit you. We can pay you if this has become about money." I almost laughed. If this has become about money, Mason, it was always about money. You simply saved yours by using my life instead. My father said my name in warning. "Mara." I turned to him. "No, not tonight." The gallery quieted. Even the people across the room sensed something was happening. My mother's voice dropped. "You are embarrassing yourself." There it was, her deepest threat, public shame, the weapon she trusted most. But something strange happens when you survive the thing you fear. It loses authority. "I'm not embarrassed," I said. "I'm telling the truth." Brooke wiped her cheek. "We didn't know you felt like this." "You didn't ask." "You never said anything." "Because every time I tried, Mom called me selfish. Dad told me not to make things difficult, and you cried until I apologized for having a boundary." My mother inhaled sharply. "That is a vicious distortion." I pulled out my phone. "Would you like accuracy instead?" Her face changed. She knew before I opened the screenshots. I read the messages aloud, not dramatically, not loudly, clearly. "If we pay her once, she'll start thinking her time has value." I looked at my mother. "That was you." Then I looked at Brooke. "The kids give her life some structure. That was you." The silence afterward felt almost physical. A woman near the center wall, one of Elia's collectors, turned slowly toward my family. She was in her 70s, with silver hair and an emerald scarf. I later learned her name was Helena Park, and she owned half the serious art in northern New Mexico. She had bought 2 of my pieces that night. She said, "I'm sorry. Did you tell your daughter that paying her would make her think her time mattered?" My mother's cheeks went red. "This is private correspondence taken out of context." Helena looked at the photograph behind her, then back at my mother. "I collect artists who understand human dignity. Context is exactly what your daughter has spent this evening showing us." Mason tried to recover. "No offense, but you don't know our family." "No," Helena said. "But I know entitlement when it walks into a room and demands unpaid labor from the artist whose name is on the wall." A murmur moved through the gallery. My mother looked around and realized she had lost control of the audience. That was the first time I saw fear in her eyes. Not fear of losing me, fear of being seen. My father spoke quietly. "Mara, perhaps we should continue this another time." "We won't continue this until something changes," I said. Brooke folded her arms around herself. "What do you want from us?" The question should have been simple. An apology, recognition, accountability. But standing there, I realized I no longer wanted to negotiate my personhood. I had spent too many years begging them to offer what love should have given freely. "I want distance," I said. "I want no requests for childcare, no guilt messages, no messages sent through the children, no comments about my work being a phase, No treating my time as available because I'm unmarried and childless. If you want a relationship with me, it begins with respect. If you can't offer that, then we don't have one. My mother stared at me as if I were a stranger. You would cut off your own family. No, I said. I'm cutting off the part where being family means being consumed. Tessa's hand found mine. I did not realize until then that I had been shaking. My father looked at the floor. Brooke cried silently. Mason looked angry, but for once he seemed uncertain where to aim it. My mother lifted her chin. You will come to regret humiliating us. I looked around the gallery, at the photographs, at the women on the walls, at Elia's, Tessa, Helena, and all the strangers who had seen more of me in one night than my family had in 3 decades. No, I said. I think I'll regret how long I waited. They left without goodbye. After the door closed, nobody spoke for a few seconds. Then Helena raised her glass toward me. To time having value. Someone laughed softly. Someone else clapped. Then the room filled with applause, not loud and theatrical, but warm, rising, real. I covered my mouth because I did not know what to do with honor that did not demand repayment. Elias leaned close and said, You understand this exhibition just became unforgettable. I'm sorry, I whispered. For what? For the scene. He shook his head. Mara, your work is about being unseen by systems that benefit from not looking. Tonight, the system walked in and identified itself. By the end of the evening, 9 of the 12 pieces had sold. My share was more money than I had earned in 4 months of bookkeeping. Helena commissioned a new series on women business owners in small towns. The Arts magazine asked for a full profile. Elias offered to represent me for 1 year with an option to extend. I went back to Blue Door after midnight with Tessa, carrying flowers, a folder of receipts, and the strange, weightless exhaustion of someone who had survived both success and confrontation in the same room. In the apartment upstairs, I took out the old Nikon and placed it beside the gallery contract. The camera that had taught me to see. The contract that proved someone had seen me back. I slept for 11 hours. The article came out 6 weeks later with the headline, Still Seen, Mara Ellison and the Art of Refusing Disappearance. My face was on the first page, not glamorous, not polished into someone else, just me. Dark hair loose, eyes direct, a small scar near my chin visible because the photographer did not edit it out. The article told enough of the story without naming my family. It discussed emotional labor, women who disappear inside obligation, the quiet violence of being valued only for what you absorb. Messages flooded my inbox. Women wrote from kitchens, offices, hospital waiting rooms, parked cars, guest rooms where they were sleeping after leaving husbands, mothers, siblings, entire family systems. They said, I thought it was just me. They said, my family calls me selfish too. They said, I have been the dependable one for so long I forgot I was allowed to depend on myself. For months, those messages became part of my healing. Not because pain is beautiful. It is. But recognition can be holy. Every time a woman told me she had said no for the first time, I thought of the red dots appearing beside my photographs. Proof of value. Proof that something hidden could enter the world and matter. My family reacted exactly as you might expect. My mother sent one email after the article, 3 paragraphs long, explaining that I had mischaracterized normal family expectations, through the lens of personal bitterness. She did not apologize. Brooke sent a message saying she wished I had spoken privately instead of turning strangers against us. Mason said nothing. My father surprised me. 2 months after the opening, a small envelope arrived at Blue Door. Inside was a note in his handwriting. Mara, I saw the exhibition article. I don't know how to talk about all of this yet, but I should have noticed more. I am sorry for that, Dad. It was not enough to erase anything, but it was the first honest sentence any of them had given me. I put the note in a drawer. I did not answer for a week. Then I wrote back. Thank you for saying that. I'm not ready for more right now, Mara. And that was enough. A year has passed since the anniversary dinner. I still live above Blue Door, though now I pay rent because I insisted and Tessa finally stopped arguing. I still help in the coffee house 3 mornings a week, mostly because I like the regulars, and because making cappuccinos is strangely peaceful when no one is using family loyalty as a weapon. I bookkeep for a few clients remotely. I photograph almost every day. North Window extended my representation. Helena's commission became a traveling collection. My second exhibition, Thresholds, opened in the spring and sold out before closing night. It included the self-portrait from Amarillo. A young woman stood in front of it for 20 minutes and later told me, "She looks like she just chose herself." I told her she was right. Brooke had her 3rd baby, a boy named Theo. She sent a birth announcement. I sent a gift and a card. I did not fly back. My mother has not spoken to me directly in 8 months, which I used to think would destroy me. Instead, the silence has become clean. My father emails occasionally, short messages, a photo of the dog, a question about one of my prints, weather, small bridges not yet strong enough to cross fully, but no longer pretending the canyon isn't there. Jonah and Isla send drawings sometimes. I keep every one. I love them. I also understand now that loving children does not require surrendering my life to the adults who had them. Sometimes people ask whether leaving felt like revenge. It didn't. Revenge would have meant I was still organizing my life around their reaction. Leaving was different. Leaving was the first decision I made without imagining how to make it comfortable for everyone else. The strangest part of freedom is how ordinary it becomes. You wake up, you make coffee, you answer emails, you buy groceries, you laugh with a friend, you edit photographs. You forget for entire afternoons that you were once someone who measured her worth by how little trouble she caused. Then something small brings it back. A woman apologizing for taking up space in line. A daughter carrying 3 bags while her brother carries none. A mother saying, "She's just better at helping." And you feel the old ache, not because you are still trapped, but because now you can recognize the cage. A few weeks ago, I found a box Tessa had shipped from my old apartment. Inside were things I had forgotten: spare keys, old birthday cards, a cracked phone charger, and a framed photograph from Brooke's wedding. In it, I stood behind my sister, holding the train of her dress, my face half hidden by her veil. Everyone else was looking at the camera. I was looking down, making sure she could walk. I almost threw it away. Then I took it to the studio, removed it from the frame, and pinned it above my desk beside my newest work. Not because I miss that version of myself, but because I honor her. She survived by becoming useful. She did not yet know there were other ways to be loved. She carried too much for too long, and when the time came, she carried herself out. That is what I want anyone listening to remember. The person you were when you accepted less than you deserved is not your enemy. She was trying to keep you safe. He was trying to keep peace. They were trying to survive inside rules they did not create. But survival is not the same as living. At some point, you have to ask whether the role your family gave you is a role you are willing to die inside. If you are the responsible one, the easy one, the single one, the childless one, the one with the flexible schedule, the one who never says no, the one everyone praises only when you disappear into service, listen carefully. Your time has value before anyone pays for it. Your dreams are real before anyone validates them. Your exhaustion is evidence. Your resentment is information. Your body knows when love has become labor without rest. And no family title gives anyone the right to spend your life without your consent. I used to think being chosen meant being needed. Now I know being needed can become a trap when nobody cares whether you are nourished too. Real love does not require you to vanish. Real family does not punish you for having boundaries. Real belonging does not depend on how much of yourself you are willing to give away. My name is Mara Ellison. I am 34 now. I live in New Mexico above a blue coffee house, and every morning the mountains change color before the sun fully rises. My old Nikon still sits on my shelf, scratched and faithful. Beside it is a newer camera bought with money my art earned. On the wall hangs a print from my first exhibition, a woman in a laundromat folding shirts with tenderness in her hands. People often ask why that image matters so much to me. I tell them it is because she taught me something before I even understood the lesson. A woman can be tired and still be worthy. A woman can be overlooked and still be luminous. A woman can spend years caring for everyone else and still decide, one day, to return to herself. And when she does, the people who benefited from her silence may call it betrayal. Let them. Sometimes the first honest word for freedom is no. If this story reached a place in you that has been quiet for too long, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment with the boundary you are learning to set. Subscribe to After Silence Stories for more stories like this, and I'll see you in the next episode.